Kitchen table, 9:47 p.m. The kid you're watching types, "Write me a 5-paragraph essay on the causes of the Civil War," into ChatGPT. 18 seconds later, it's on his screen. He copies it into the doc, closes the laptop, calls it done. From where you're sitting, that's the future arriving. The AI generation, already ahead. So here's the question I want to answer. Is that kid actually getting smarter, dumber, or something in between? And the uncomfortable follow-up, who is that kid most likely to be? The discourse insists on 2 stories. AI is rotting kids' brains, or kids growing up with AI will run circles around the rest of us. Both can't be right. The evidence says neither is. And if we keep missing the actual variable, we're losing the only generation that gets to find out. Start with what we actually know. About 2/3 of US teens, 64%, say they use AI chatbots, and about 3 in 10 use them every day. That's from a Pew survey of 1,458 teens published in February. More than half of those teens use AI for schoolwork specifically, and the share of teens using ChatGPT for homework doubled in a single year. 13% in 2023, 26% by late 2024. This is mainstream infrastructure now, like having a phone. Every cheating panic before this one, calculators, Google, Wikipedia, eventually got absorbed. The schools blinked, the kids kept working. The new tool became the table stakes. So the implicit read on the kitchen table kid is that this one is the same. The technology works, the kid finishes. The cheating panic headline feels overblown. So I spent an afternoon doing exactly what the average teen is doing. I opened ChatGPT and typed, "Write me a 5-paragraph essay on the causes of the Civil War at a high school level." 18 seconds, 5 paragraphs. Confident sounding, mostly accurate, no follow-up questions. The tool didn't ask me what I already knew. It didn't ask what I wanted to argue. It just handed me an essay shaped like an essay. And that looked fine from one angle. The technology worked, the kid finished, the panic felt overblown. Until I asked the next question. Not what AI is doing to kids on average, but which kids are using it the most. Here's the catch. When you look at Pew's demographic breakdown, the kids using AI most for school aren't who you'd guess. They're actually the opposite of who you'd guess. The kids leaning hardest on AI for homework are the ones whose schools and families have the least slack. Pew breaks the data out cleanly. Teens from households under $30,000 a year do most of their schoolwork with AI, at nearly 3 times the rate of higher income teens, 20% versus 7%. Black and Hispanic teens use ChatGPT for schoolwork at notably higher rates than white teens, about 6 in 10 compared to about half. The cheating panic discourse skipped this story entirely. It implicitly imagined private school kids gaming their way through their college applications. The reality is closer to a public school kid with a paper due in the morning, nobody available to sit at the table next to her. The AI generation isn't evenly distributed. The kids doing the most homework with AI are the kids whose schools don't have a tutoring add-on. Their parents have less bandwidth to sit through a problem set. They get judged hardest when AI use reads as cheating. That's an ironic loop. The kids who most need a tool that actually teaches them are the ones using a tool that teaches them least. And here's the part that surprised me most. The teens themselves draw sharper ethical lines than the discourse implies. 54% say it's acceptable to use AI to research a topic, but only 18% say it's acceptable to use it to write essays. 42% say writing essays with AI is not acceptable. The kids know. They're not the ones confused about what counts as their own work. The systems around them are. So I ran the same Civil War prompt through Memo, Khan Academy's pedagogically designed AI tutor, built on GPT-4 and used by hundreds of thousands of students. It didn't write the essay. It asked me what I already knew about the Civil War. Then what I thought the most important cause was. Then why? It pushed back when I gave it a thin answer. It made me show my work on each step. 15 minutes of questions before it gave me anything that looked like an answer. By the end, I had written most of the essay myself, and I could explain every sentence. Different tool, different job, quietly aimed at a different kid, the one with someone walking them through it. Here's what this costs families. The kids using AI most for school are getting the version of AI that's worst at teaching them. The kids whose parents can pay for a real tutor or for a pedagogically designed AI program are getting the version that actually works. Which means, if that's right, the gap doesn't close as AI gets cheaper. Because the bad version is free, and the good version is the one parents have to know to ask for. So, back to the question. Smarter or dumber isn't the right axis. Which AI used how is. The kids most likely to use AI for schoolwork are using the version least built to teach them. The version that actually teaches is the one almost nobody is handing them. Here's the strongest piece of evidence we've got. A peer-reviewed Harvard randomized controlled trial tested 194 physics students. Half got the material in an active learning classroom. Half got it from an AI tutor researchers had custom built for the task. The AI-tutored students learned about double what the in-class group learned in less time, with higher engagement and motivation. It was published in Nature's Scientific Reports last year. Greg Keston, the Harvard physics lecturer who built the tutor, did something specific with GPT-4. He customized it to ask students questions back instead of just answering, to address common misunderstandings as they came up, to reveal answers step by step. Same underlying technology as ChatGPT, different design, different result. And Conmigo, the same tutor I just walked through, went from about 40,000 students in 2023 to roughly 700,000 last year, projected past 1 million this year. Real pedagogical tools exist at scale. Now, the famous MIT study people use to argue the other side. Yes, an MIT Media Lab preprint found that adults writing essays with ChatGPT showed weaker brain engagement and worse recall of their own writing. Real finding. But here's the catch, and you need the catch. It's a preprint, not peer-reviewed. The subjects were adults aged 18 to 39, not kids. Only 18 people completed all the sessions the headline rests on. Independent reviewers flagged a confounding effect. The actual claim is narrow. Land that narrow claim on the kid from the kitchen table. He would remember roughly nothing of the essay in his doc. Not because his brain is broken, because he didn't do the thinking. The tool didn't ask him to. That's not the version of AI rotting his brain. That's the version we handed him. Both dominant stories miss the variable. Kids who grow up with AI will be ahead. Depends entirely on which AI. AI is destroying education. Depends entirely on which AI. The shape of the AI determines the outcome. A kid using Conmigo is in a different cognitive workout than a kid using ChatGPT to write the essay. They're both growing up with AI. They are not having the same childhood. The kids most likely to get the do-it-for-them version are the ones who already had the least margin to lose. The headline story, the AI generation, assumes the kids are in one group. They're not. They're in at least two. The gap between those two groups isn't an AI gap. It's the same equity gap we already had, just running on a faster, freer, more confident tool. If I were you, the thing I'd watch for isn't whether the kid in your life uses AI. They do, or they will. The thing to watch is which AI and what it asks of them. A tool that asks a kid to think before it answers is a different object than a tool that hands over the answer, even if they have the same logo on the home screen. Here's the one thing worth doing differently. When a kid in your life shows you something AI did for them, ask what the tool asked them, not what they got. What the tool asked them. If the answer is nothing, it just gave it to me, that's the version least likely to leave anything behind. Back to the kitchen table, 9:47 p.m. The laptop's open, then closed, and the essay's in the dock. The thing about that scene isn't that AI wrote the essay. It's that nothing in the room asked the kid a single question about it. Not the tool, not the assignment, not the adults who handed him the laptop. The next generation isn't growing up with AI. They're growing up with whichever AI the adults around them happen to hand them. That's not the same thing. That's the memo. Read.